Brandon, I want to talk a little bit about transition. I think we're always going to be in a state of transition when we're talking about mobile learning and mobile technology. Tell us about some of the challenges you're facing now, since that's really your role, is to manage that transition. Talk to us about what the learners' expectations are, and tell us about how you're having to retrain the people who are producing the training to meet the needs of the devices as well as the people. You know, what are some of those designs, those designs we need to be conscious of when we're going to mobile?
Yeah, that's 3 hours. Only two things. So devices don't matter to me. So I don't care anything about a device. What I care about is an operating system. That does matter. But anything I do is going to work across any operating system that we support. So we're not focused on hardware or the device because that doesn't really matter. People are going to have what they have. Most of the people that work for us have a smartphone of some sort, and we provide a type of device that can also display content as well. So I don't get hung up on device. I'm device agnostic. I think two things matter the most: content and context. So when you're in a mobile situation, context is really key. And one of the things that helped me the most when I was figuring out what may or may not work in a mobile situation is to fully understand what we call the mobile mindsets. So you need to really focus on how people behave with their devices and what they do when they have them with them. We engage in one of 7 mindsets at any time we have our device with us. So part of the challenge with that is to deeply understand that from a behavioral psychological issue perspective. And the key to that for your learning and development organization is to understand that an instructional ID that's trained in the science of instructional design is probably going to need to rethink a lot of what they do to provide the right content and context for a mobile device, because context in some respects is more important than content. So like the team I have we don't have an instructional designer on our team right now that's trained in the science of instructional design. That's working on the apps we're working on. However, what you do need to have is a technical focus. You need to understand the technology behind it and understand how people, like I said, the behaviors around the mindsets. And then you add in the science of it, because there is a science to what we do that is necessary to be there. But you need that kind of trifecta if you're going to be effective.
Can you give us an example of what that might look like?
Yeah, so we're struggling right now with something that we call the user experience. And so what we have to do is combine the behavior someone engages in when they're with the device. They kind of pogo stick around. There's short bursts of content. They jump in and out. They expect hyper individualization, hyper localization. They wake up with their device and they go to sleep with their device. So they have an emotional connection to this device. They expect it to understand them. So having said that, just delivering kind of a generic set of, displaying generic content is not going to work. It's not going to be meaningful to them. So you have to figure out ways to individualize that experience for them. And some of that is looking at understanding their location, understanding what's around them, giving them prompts or notifications when something might be key for them to look at or do. I'll argue to the end of the day that notifications are actually more important than almost anything you can do on a mobile device. The problem we have with notifications right now is they're all democratic. So everything has the same level of importance on a device right now. So we need to deal with that. But notifying and letting someone, alerting someone to something is really key. So the talent behind that, and I'm not diminishing the need for the science of instructional design, but that needs to be augmented with understanding mobile behavior patterns, operating systems, gestures, swiping, what people can do with a camera, what people can do with geolocation, what the compass means, what all of the sensors do for you. All of that, if you're going to design an experience for a mobile device, you have to get beyond the content. And that's the big struggle that a lot of learning organizations are undergoing now. We're struggling with that a bit ourselves, and we just have to figure that out. So the ID, the 2020 ID, is going to be a lot different than the ID of 2014, I think.
You know, and I find myself learning a lot on my phone. You know, I'm sure a lot of us do that. You know, if I'm walking through an airport or waiting for my flight, or admittedly, even while driving once or twice, I've learned something on my phone. Now, I'm usually listening. I like podcasts, just to put everybody at ease if you see me on the road. But are you looking at some, if you can be more specific even about some of those formats? The notifications are a good example. What do you think about, you know, you've got a wide demographic or set of demographics you're shooting for. What kind of formats do you think resonate to deliver your message?
Well, again, I think for meaningful content in context, you have to understand, again, like I said, how people use it and what they really want to get out of it. So if you look at the mobile mindsets, for example, and you guys can search, Yahoo does a lot of great studies on the mobile mindsets, and they do it really for marketing. So all you need to do is search Yahoo mobile mindsets and you'll get it. It's all publicly available data. They do it for marketing, but learning people can take what marketing people do and kind of use that, right? Because a lot of what we do is marketing anyway. But so like when someone is searching on their device, they're usually frustrated. When you're in search mode, what are you wanting to achieve? You're wanting to find an answer to a problem, or you're standing on a street corner and you're wanting to get somewhere. You're trying to find information to help you in that moment. Well, that's a different context and a different mindset that a person has when they're sitting in a classroom or when they're in their cubicle, you know, at their computer doing something. So we have to understand what our mobile learners, you know, are going to be experiencing with their environment around them at the time they're consuming the content. So we always think, for instance, that shorter is better. Oh my God, if it's a minute-long video, you've lost them, blah, blah, blah. And there's not a lot of research on this yet, but the research that is there says that that's actually not true. That people will read long articles, look at long videos on a mobile device, on a small screen. They will stand there and do it if it's what? Meaningful to them. So the point is, don't make your content shorter necessarily, make it better and make the context of that, how that content is presented, effective for them and meaningful for them. I'm not going to produce a 5-minute long video for one of my associates to watch in an aisle at the Home Depot because we have some bandwidth issues, we have a lot of noise, you can't hear it. It's not a good context for that. So I'm going to look for a different type of experience. So the instructional designer that has to build these experiences has to have different perspectives on how this is going to be consumed. And that's hard because you don't necessarily know what the context is that someone really is in. So for instance, I have a tablet and a smartphone and a computer on my desk all day. I might be doing something in my web browser on my computer. I might check my email on my smartphone just instantly, and I might look something up on Google on my tablet. So it's hard to guess what people are going to be doing and what behavior they're going to be kind of going to with these different devices around them. And what people are now doing is they're labeling devices for certain things, right? So it might be, you know, it might be that they want to focus more, so they'll move the two devices their way and look at the computer screen. So I think it's key, I don't want to ramble on, but I think it's key that an instructional designer, especially if you're doing this quote responsive, which I don't really agree that you can design once and deliver it everywhere, but if you are under that mode of responsive design across different devices, you have to figure out that the experiences on those different devices are fundamentally going to be different for that person, and they're probably going to be doing different things, even if they're sitting on the couch at home. They may not be mobile, but they're going to be in a different context when they're holding the device in their hand. So it's not like it's an easy solution for the instructional designer, but that's what you've got now.
Let's talk more about transition. I think time for questions. Okay, well, maybe one more question, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. Susan, one more for you. You get to be our last.
Okay.
All right. Talk more about transition. Talk about what, you know, a sales force might need as far as some of those specific formats, the type of content that you think would resonate with them. What's resonating with them now? What do you see in the future as resonating with that type of audience? that could be delivered to, let's say, a tablet device, what's the most practical type of format, or the most useful type of format for that audience?
I have several. I think there's a lot of ways you can get to everyone now because we're all used to this. So video is very good. I think it has to be very engaging content. That's what your point was. Gaming, I'm a huge fan of. I completely agree with that, Doug. I've had kind of a challenge as a learning leader deciding whether you buy it and bring it in and customize it or whether you try to build it in-house. Because it's very hard to get a game up that is relevant to what you're trying to teach them fast and inexpensively. I think there's more tools coming out to do that, but I've really struggled with that in the past. But I am such a fan of it. I mean, especially with the millennials. I mean, these people grew up on Wii, right? And that's what they're used to doing. And if we don't, as a training industry or training leaders, deliver content that way, then I think we're going to lose them because that's how they're used to interacting with the devices, among other things. So I think videos work. I think people still read things. I think making engaging content is what they need. And, you know, the salespeople want the search engine too because they want just-in-time information. They want mobility because they're always out and about. The sales force that I'm talking about, I'm not talking about inside sales. And so we've seen effectiveness with them having the mobile device. Although I said we're early on it because I think we've sort of, as a different point, not trained them well enough and not had a whole strategy so that everybody knows where we're trying to go with this device and these are the applications that you're going to now use on the device. Another just funny thing to say too, if you roll out that kind of device to your sales force that we learned, they're not pharma reps, but they're in with physicians. And we had to sort of teach them to show the iPad, to show what was on the screen, and not have it taken from them. You know, because someone said, oh yeah, let me see that, and you've lost the control of the call. So I just thought that was a funny thing that we learned that we weren't like expecting, how to teach them how to hold the iPad to do the pitch.
It is a personal device, isn't it?
Yeah, but you know.
Well,